Herzliya Conference 2012.
Herzliya Conference 2012.
Professor Gabriel Ben-Dor, you are the Director of National Security Studies at Haifa University. I'd like to ask you, what will you speak about at the panel today?
I will speak about national resilience in Israel, which refers to the social component of national security, which is to say the major components about the attitudes of the people to national security, what it is, how they think about it, how they feel about it, to what extent they trust the people who are the leaders of the country, tackling national security problems and such.
So national security for Israel, is it about having a strong military, or is it also about having a strong economy?
Basically, we are measuring 5 components of national security: patriotism, militancy, optimism, feelings of threat, and trust and confidence in the leadership of political institutions, security institutions, and other institutions in the country. A strong society breeds a strong economy. A strong society, a strong economy, a strong technology and scientific establishment can produce a strong military establishment. But the Israeli military establishment is not a variable in its own right. In the classic concept of Israeli national security, what counts is the quality of Israeli society and the individuals in Israeli society, and these add up to our national strengths. And this is why we are not measuring here numbers of airplanes or tankers or missiles, but rather the attitudes of the people and how they relate to the country, to the components of national security, and to the leadership. This is the secret of Israel's security.
Is Israel a strong country?
Very. It is a very strong country in the measures that I'm trying to survey every year. As I said, Israelis are more patriotic than almost any other country in the world other than the United States, also very patriotic. They are more optimistic about the future than almost any other Western democracy. They are as distrustful of their leaders as people in other Western democracies, which may not be a bad sign, because there is something healthy in a democracy about not trusting your leaders too much. Israelis are huge consumers of communications, radio, television, newspapers, because they want to be informed. Israelis tend to be more patient than they seem to be towards security problems. They realize we have to live with them for a long time. They cannot be resolved just like that with a military step taken one way or another by the use of force. So all in all, I think the picture is a very patient, very mature, and well-informed society, which is why we are strong.
And it's funny, quite ironic, that Israel is perceived like a very militant country on the outside. That's the image that Israel has. And yet you say that the Israeli population is not very militant.
It's not very militant. And if next time somebody tells you that the government has taken a step of invading this or that part of a territory because it felt under the pressure of public opinion, don't believe it. This is just not the case. In general, the fun of studying problems like this in a scientific way is to come up with counterintuitive findings, things that don't tally with what you read in the newspapers or what you watch on television. And so these are the aspects I'm going to emphasize during the conference, to say that the story is very different from what it seems to be, and a profound study of the situation takes you into greater depth, better understanding, and in this particular case, towards more optimistic findings and conclusions as well.
And you mentioned that the Arab population in Israel, there isn't such a wide gap between them and the Jewish Israeli population.
Well, the gap is still wide, but not as wide as it seems to be. Which is to say, if you listen only to the radical rhetoric of the various leaders of the Arab minority in the Knesset, you don't find almost any common ground between them and the rest of the members of the Knesset on major political or security questions. And this is not the case with the voting public, which thinks differently. They want to get along, they want to make a good living, they realize that they are a minority, and this means that they have to come to terms with the country being different than they would like it to be, because it's not entirely theirs. And I think that their willingness to accept these facts of life in order to build some kind of sustainable coexistence is very impressive and quite different from what their leaders present the picture to be.
But people say that Israelis treat Arabs as second-class citizens. Is there any truth to that?
There is a truth to the fact that Jewish Israelis consider the Arabs not to be full citizens, in the sense that they do not agree to take upon themselves all the duties of the Israeli citizens. Namely, they do not serve in the military, which is the most burdensome duty for the Jewish population. And in that sense, to some extent, they are discriminated against by not being given all the rights and privileges of other Israelis. But I think that if this problem were to be resolved, and if the Arab citizens showed their total loyalty and commitment to the state, this problem could be resolved much more easily. And with some parts of the Israeli minorities, it has been resolved, say with the Druze to a large extent, because they do serve in the military, and they have a different problem in that they are not treated well enough compared to the other Arabs who do not serve, which makes for a different kind of frustration. But basically, this is the crux of the problem.
You're an expert on the Druze community.
Yes.
How do they fit into this equation?
Well, they are a minority within a minority. They are Arabic-speaking. They are not Jews, obviously, but they do serve in the military. They do consider themselves fully Israelis. And on almost every single measure which we have surveyed, the attitudes of the Druze resemble those of the Jews far more than those of the Arabic-speaking minorities. So we have, in fact, a minority within a minority, which is, I think, a great resource from the Israeli point of view and should be cultivated as such.
Professor Ben-Dor, thank you for joining us, and we wish you good luck in the rest of the conference and in the upcoming panel.
Okay, thank you.
Herzliya Conference 2012.
Herzliya Conference 2012.